What's the darkest secret you've never told anyone? Story 1. After my parents got divorced, my stepfather basically moved right in and started taking advantage of me. I knew it was wrong deep down somewhere, but I figured since he was an adult, he knew what he was doing and that I should trust him. One night, my sister caught him red-handed, panicked, and told my mother. The police came, and he was arrested. I was only around 9 or 10 years old, so a lot of it is a blur. At first, my mother had me sleeping in bed with her at night and was babying me, and I loved it. One day, months later, we were walking home from school, and we saw my father's van sitting outside our house. We were not allowed in, and we saw garbage bags sitting outside. My father told us that my mother had called him earlier in the week and told him that if he did not come and get us, she would get rid of us. She would not come out and talk to us, and I cried. My father lived in another state, so this meant we would have to leave our friends in our hometown. Our friends ran after the van as we drove away. For a few years, she would not talk to us because she had allowed my stepfather to come back, and that is why she stayed away. I guess she did not want to face us after what she had done. She had chosen a man who had hurt her child over her own children. Eventually, we had a relationship with her again, but she was very sick. The strange thing is that she holds a really high position in one of the largest banks in America. Professionally, people think she is amazing. She is a monster. I finally had the courage to cut her out when I went into recovery from addiction 11 years ago and have not spoken to her since. A few people know this story, but not many, and it felt good to finally share it with the world. My life has flourished since cutting her off. People always say how I need my mother. I do not. Do not be afraid to remove family from your life just because they are family. Thank you for allowing me to share this. Some clarifications. The trash bags were the clothes my mother had gathered for us. My brother and I each had one bag full of clothes and none of our other belongings. My father was poor. We barely had running water and lived in a small log cabin in rural northeastern Pennsylvania, United States. He struggled with alcoholism for years and carried anger, resentment, and shame for not confronting my stepfather and for not saving us sooner. The woman he was with left him when he gained custody of us, and he almost died from that. He got pneumonia, and we had to help him through it. I was picked on for a few years at first because we were clearly very poor, and children can be cruel. I eventually started fighting back, and then I began getting into a lot of fights. It was my way of having control, and in my traumatized adolescent mind, if people were afraid of me, then I would never get hurt again. My addiction came from having no coping skills and not wanting to feel the disgust and shame I carried for myself. I ended up in jail in the year 2011, and that started my recovery journey. I had no contact with my father for almost 10 years, and then I made amends with him in the year 2018. He was sober, and we became closer during that time than we had ever been. I cherish those memories with him. He sadly died very unexpectedly after hitting his head in January of the year 2021. Story 2. When I was 10 years old, I was the victim of a serial predator. She was a teacher, a woman, and no one believed me. This detail is important because it explains why I later did what I did. Several years ago, I saw her while I was shopping. At first, I was afraid, but then I realized I was not 10 anymore. I was a 25-year-old adult man. I became angry. I followed her for weeks, saw that she was still working as a teacher, and found her on social media. I pretended to be someone else and joined the online group she was in. I learned that she had harmed more children since she had lost me as her pet, which was what she called her victims. After I confirmed everything and gathered all the information, I covered her neighborhood with flyers containing her own posts about how much she enjoyed the feeling of power she had over children. The flyers included her face, her address, her phone number, and other details. This is not a dark secret to me because if I get caught, so be it. I exposed someone who destroyed lives. Story 3. 2 days before my father ended his life, he called me and told me what he wanted to do. He had been calling me for months, telling me how depressed he was, and I was tired of hearing it. I hung up on him. I hung up on my suicidal father. He ended his life on my 17th birthday. Everyone in the family thinks it was just a coincidence that he did it on that day. But I know the truth. I have never told a single family member because I know they would blame me, as especially my brother. Since that day, I have had a recurring nightmare where I see my father in a grocery store. He is pushing an empty shopping cart and looking at me from the other end of the aisle, but he keeps walking. When I run toward him, he appears again at the opposite end. It repeats over and over until I wake up screaming. Some secrets stay with you forever. Story 4. I was married for 13 years to my best friend. We had what I thought was a great, easy marriage. One day, our 5-year-old daughter told me that he had been making her do things no child should ever have to do. I was shocked, devastated, and terrified. He was one of those fun, charming people everyone loved to be around. I immediately called the police, and he was arrested. When they investigated, they discovered that he had been arrested in college for exposing himself to very young children. He only received a minor punishment that time because he came from a wealthy family. One of his uncles was the governor of the state we lived in. I was so ashamed that I told our friends he had an affair and moved away. The truth was that he was in prison for 5 years. I picked up the pieces, sent our daughter to therapy, and spent the next 15 years focusing entirely on being a mother, paying for private school, trips, and everything she needed. She was my entire world. Then when she went to college, he contacted her through social media. When I saw that she was communicating with him, I was heartbroken all over again. I called her and told her that she was an adult, but I thought she should be careful because he was not safe. She hung up on me and has not spoken to me since. That was 4 years ago. I still send her $40,000 a year to pay for medical school. It has all been almost unbelievable. Thank you for allowing me to share this. Story 5. When I was younger, I lived with my grandmother. Not long after I turned 18, her health began to decline in a way that made it clear she would not be around much longer. Over the months, I did my best to take care of her, getting her to the hospital when needed and helping however I could. We also had someone who came daily to assist with things I could not handle. What my family does not know is that on the night she passed, I was in the living room watching television. My dog was in bed with her, and I started to hear him whimper and bark. I knew what was happening. I knew that if I acted quickly, I might save her. But I did not want to see her suffer anymore, to watch her live with constant pain and dependence. So I made the decision to let her pass before calling anyone. She lived 92 years, and my only regret is that she passed a month after I would have graduated if I had not been expelled from school. She had been healthy enough at the time to attend my graduation. I still think about how foolish I was back then. Story 6. When I was about 9 or 10 years old, I was walking home with my dog from a house around the block when he cut the corner and walked diagonally through the yard of a very mean old woman who lived at the end of our street. She was in her yard at the time, tending to her beautiful rose bushes that grew along the border with her neighbor. My dog, a friendly golden retriever, did not even come close to her and certainly did nothing threatening, but she sprayed him with some kind of chemical she was using on her roses. I ran back home with my dog and hosed him off. He coughed a lot but seemed otherwise fine. I did not tell my parents because I thought I would get in trouble for letting him walk in her yard. I am glad I did not, though, because that night I sneaked out of the house through the bathroom window, went down the street to her yard, and cut down every single rose bush I could reach. Story 7. In high school, I was a really good student, straight A's, quiet, and always focused on my work. There was this guy in my advanced classes who was the complete opposite: loud, obnoxious, and constantly pulling stunts that he could somehow talk his way out of. We never spoke, but I could not stand him. Maybe it was the time he teased a girl for being cold and made her uncomfortable, or maybe it was how he pretended to be friends with a classmate on the spectrum just to make him do his homework before mocking him the next day. Whatever it was, I decided to get even in my own quiet way. Every now and then, sometimes once a week, sometimes once every few months, I would make this high-pitched whistle that sounds exactly like a tea kettle. I can do it without moving my mouth much, and no one at school knew I could. Every single time, the obnoxious guy got blamed for it. Teachers would scold him, the class would laugh, and I would just sit there quietly, never once suspected. Story 8. My wife, her mother, and I bought a house about 2 years ago. From talking to the neighbors, I learned that the family who lived here before us had a daughter who got involved with some bad people. A few months after we moved in, a man knocked on our door late at night asking for gas. We lived down a long driveway, so it was strange that he came all the way up just to ask that. I think he was looking for the previous owners. Then one Sunday morning while I was making pancakes, there was a knock at the door again, this time from 4 sheriff's deputies. They said they had received a 911 call that hung up, traced to our house. We do not have a landline, and my wife and our 2-year-old obviously had not called anyone. They mentioned a name, and I explained that we had moved in earlier that year. They seemed satisfied and left. Later, while doing yard work, I talked to a neighbor who had seen the police cars. When I told him what happened, he said, "Oh yeah, that family was messed up. The cops were probably being cautious because of the shooting." I was confused and asked what shooting. He looked at me with a worried face and said, "The shooting in your house?" I was stunned. He explained that about 2 years earlier, the father had confronted his daughter and her boyfriend, and it ended with the boyfriend being shot and killed inside the house. Our state does not require disclosure of such things during sale, so we had no idea. Suddenly, all the strange things that had happened since we moved in made more sense. The neighbor told me that after the incident, friends of the victim had terrorized the family for a while, slashing tires, setting off fireworks at night, and other odd things. I thanked him for telling me, but asked him never to mention it to my wife or mother-in-law. They get spooked easily, and I want them to feel safe here. Story 9. This first part is not exactly dark, but when I was about 9 years old, my cousin, who was 12 at the time, would make out with me. I did not really understand what was happening at that age, but I thought I would get in trouble if I told anyone. For some reason, about 6 years went by before I saw him again, and it was never brought up or mentioned. He was like a completely different person. Sometimes I wonder if it even happened. My memory is not very reliable, and it was so long ago now that I am in my 20s. Fast forward a few more years, and I found out he died a couple of years ago while cleaning a gun. He accidentally shot himself. My great aunt, who was his grandmother and who basically raised him, believes completely that it was an accident, but I am not so sure. He grew up around guns, knew exactly how they worked, how to empty them, and everything else. I find the odds that he forgot to clear the chamber very low. I also know he had been struggling with depression and brain damage from a car accident the year before. Still, I will never tell my aunt any of this. It would break her heart. Story 10. Cutting my father out of my life was the best decision I have ever made. I hope it eats at him every day, not knowing how his only child and only grandchild are doing. I tried for years to have a relationship with him, from when I was 10 until I was 18. From the ages of 10 to 13, he would tell me he wished I had died when I was sick as a kindergartner because I would not have tattled and ruined his marriage to my mother. I tried multiple times to make it work, but was never successful. I kept trying for my mother's sake, to help her financially, and would visit him for months at a time. When I was 14, he locked me in a closet for hours. From 16 to 18, he thought throwing money around would help me. But I was already working by then, and it did not matter. I still have a daily battle in my head where I ask myself if he was right or not. But when I look at my child, I cannot imagine ever thinking such vile things about them at that age, the way my father did about me. Story 11. This is not my secret, but my mother's. I am not hiding it from everyone, just from the person it would matter to most. When my mother was in high school during the 1960s, she had a serious long-term boyfriend named Jimmy. They were each other's first love, had been together for years, and were planning to get married. He went away to college while my mother stayed home, but they remained together. You can probably guess what happened next. He cheated and got another girl pregnant. He came home to tell my mother that abortion was illegal, and he had no choice but to marry the other girl. My mother was devastated. Here is the secret. My mother was also pregnant by him, but had not told him yet. She decided she would never tell him. Jimmy married the other girl and never knew my mother had also been expecting. She told me later that she had thrown herself down a flight of stairs to cause a miscarriage. Years later, when social media first became popular, my mother asked me to look for Jimmy online. I found him, and they reconnected. He was still married to the same woman, and my mother was married to my father. They wrote to each other for a while, signing their messages with, "I love you." My mother passed away several years ago, but I still think about the secret she kept. Jimmy has no idea what really happened back then, and that knowledge could have changed many lives. Still, it is not my secret to tell. Story 12. The only person who knows this story is my husband. When I was 8 years old, I was desperate to be liked by the older boys on my street. I was the youngest boy there, so I rarely had anyone my age to play with. One day, a 19-year-old senior in high school named Mike noticed me riding my bike while he was outside playing basketball with his friend Sean. They stopped me and started talking about school, my bike, and other random things. Then Mike invited me inside for a soda. My parents rarely kept soda in the house, so it felt like a treat. Once inside with the can of soda in my hand, Mike and Sean began talking about things I did not understand. Questions about my body, whether I got certain physical reactions, and things no child should be asked. It escalated to them taking off their pants and pressuring me to do the same. I did not want to, but Mike knew I was an insecure kid and manipulated me, saying things like, "I thought you were cool." Afraid to lose the attention of the older boys, I did what they asked. That first time, they only made me touch them. But for months afterward, until Mike left for college, I was used repeatedly by them. Most of the time it was just Mike, but sometimes Sean joined in. He seemed less eager, but he still participated. I will not describe everything, but it was terrible. The strangest part was that even though I hated it while it happened, I missed it when it stopped. I felt special when Mike invited me inside. When he left for college and Sean ignored me afterward, I felt lonely and unwanted again. I never told my parents. Even more than 30 years later, they still do not know. Mike and Sean never faced any consequences for what they did to me. However, about 10 years ago, Mike went to prison for doing the same thing to another boy. There are probably more victims, but at least he finally faced justice for what he did. Story 13. Not really a dark secret, just a sad one. I live in a small town where, more or less, everyone knows each other or has some kind of connection. I have family and friends, some best, some close, some good, and some who are just acquaintances. Lately, I feel like everyone has forgotten about me, or maybe they just got tired of me. They do not include me in gatherings, outings, or events anymore, whether big or small. We used to have a group chat, but ever since I had an argument with one person in the group, things have never been the same. I reached out and tried to fix it, but it just did not work. Now I feel lonely and depressed, and seeing everyone else happy only makes it worse. Most of the time, I am by myself. They sometimes post pictures of their gatherings, and I know they try to hide them from me, except I see them anyway through my private account that they somehow forget to block. It hurts because I really thought they were my friends. Why do they have to hide it from me? I just want to disappear. When I have the money or the chance, I plan to leave everything behind and start from scratch somewhere else where nobody knows me. Maybe then, I will finally feel free. Story 14. About 10 years ago, I purposely caused a church's finances to collapse while I was working as the treasurer. Both pastors were earning ridiculous amounts of money for the little work they were doing and were misusing funds by almost $5,000 a month. One of them refused to follow the board's decisions about not giving money to certain people. None of the board members wanted to confront them, and technically the pastors were not breaking the law, but what they were doing was morally wrong. Everyone who does not know the truth thinks I made a few clerical mistakes that nearly bankrupted the church. I am still disliked by a lot of people because of it, but the handful who know the truth respect me deeply for exposing corruption. The pastors could not go to the authorities because they knew I would ruin their reputations and careers. I have no regrets about what I did. My career has been very successful ever since. Story 15. My only child, who is 23, has schizophrenia. He was diagnosed about 1.5 years ago. He is stable now, but because he is stable, he understands the difficult road ahead of him, and that is devastating for him. I am no longer married to his father, but we co-parent very well, and we are both doing everything we can to support him. Having said that, if my son were ever to follow through with his suicidal thoughts, I would completely understand. It would destroy both of us, but I know that he would finally be free from his pain. This is the hardest thing to admit as a parent. My son is my light, my entire world, but I also know that peace might be something medication, love, or stability can never truly give him. That is the most painful reality I have ever faced. Story 16. I have a son, but nobody knows except me and his mother. She was a really good friend, kind, gentle, and a bit shy. She was in her early 40s, had never had a boyfriend, and always dreamed of being a wife and a mother. When artificial insemination failed for her, costing $12,000 and giving only a 12% success rate, she was heartbroken. On a teacher's salary, she knew her chances were fading, so I stepped up. We talked everything through and decided the story would be that she had used a donor and did not know the father. We even went to a lawyer and arranged legal documents that released me from all responsibility. To me, it felt like donating to a sperm bank that just happened to be a friend. If she had continued with the clinic route, it would have cost $12,000 every time. But this way, she could try as many times as she needed. Luckily, it only took a couple of tries. We waited until she was ovulating, and I made my donation. So yes, technically, I have a son, but everyone believes I am childless. Story 17. When I was 13, there was a girl at my school who was tall, strong, and aggressive. She was athletic, loud, and always pushed the smaller boys around. One day after she picked on me, I got so angry that I wrote something really mean about her in pencil on a stairwell wall. I immediately panicked because I could not erase it, so I ran away. Later, she saw it and assumed her ex-boyfriend had written it. She confronted him and ended up attacking him in the schoolyard, which got her suspended for a month for bullying and violence. Nobody ever found out it was actually me. She transferred schools after that and had to attend anger management programs for years because of that incident. It was wild to think something so small I did out of anger had such a massive effect on her life. She came from a privileged background, but she carried a level of rage I had never seen in anyone before. Story 18. About 10 years ago, a man broke into my home, or at least kind of did. He knocked on the door, and when I answered, he shoved his way in. He started talking about the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse and demanded money for protection, saying that if I did not pay, he and his brothers of doom would come back and kill me. He was huge, claimed to be ex-Navy, and was drunk with his hand covered in blood, gripping a broken bottle. I was terrified. I told him to leave, but he would not. He got more aggressive, so I threatened him, saying I would blow his brains out if he did not get out of my house, even though I did not own a gun. He still refused to leave, so I went into the kitchen, grabbed a knife, and slashed at him several times. He stumbled away, bleeding but seemingly okay, and I never saw him again. A few days later, my neighbor told me that a man had been found dead nearby with cuts on his arms. I could only assume it was him and that he bled out. I was never questioned, even though there had been a lot of blood inside and outside my house. I lived in a rough neighborhood at the time, and I guess the police just did not care. He was apparently a repeat criminal. I killed a man, at least indirectly, and I have never told anyone. Story 19. I am a gay man and a recovering meth and S addict. Before the pandemic, I was only addicted to casual hookups, but the isolation of lockdown pushed me to try chems, specifically with methamphetamine. My friends and family do not know anything about my sexuality or my addiction. To them, I am the responsible one, the reliable breadwinner who has his life together. During my addiction, I still managed to secure a new job, a promotion, and a raise, so nobody suspected a thing. My addiction led to many risky encounters, and I contracted several sexually transmitted infections. I was on preventive medication to protect against HIV, but I still caught gonorrhea, syphilis, and chlamydia, and the worst was severe anal warts that required surgery. That was one of the lowest points of my life. I went through surgery alone, told no one, and suffered through the recovery in silence. I thought that experience would change me, but even afterward, I relapsed several times. The surgery left my anal canal permanently tight, meaning I cannot have that kind of S anymore. Part of me regrets having the surgery, not knowing it would cause that. But another part is grateful, because at least now I cannot put myself in danger again. Story 20. My daughter is not biologically mine. I have been with my wife since 2011. In 2018, I relapsed badly, and she left me. I got clean, turned my life around completely, and we eventually got back together. Shortly after, she became pregnant. We had suffered 4 miscarriages before, so I took it as a miracle. The first time I held my daughter, she was about a week old, smiling up at me, and from that moment on, I became her dad in every sense of the word. She gives me purpose and keeps me sober. Her biological father, from what I know, is a violent meth addict who has hurt people. He still lives within 50 miles of us, and he has no idea I exist. That terrifies me. I have been trying to convince my wife to move away, but she is reluctant. Our daughter is almost 4 now and starting to call me dad to truly understand what that means. My own parents do not know the truth, especially my father, because I do not know how he would react. My mother kept me from him for 18 years. It hurts every day carrying this secret, but I love my daughter more than anything. Even though people here in the rural South would see raising another man's child as weak, I do not care. She is my world, and nothing matters more to me than being her dad. Story 21. I committed adultery to escape an abusive marriage. My first husband was emotionally and mentally abusive, and I did not realize how trapped I was until someone pointed it out. One of his friends who was in a similarly toxic relationship helped me see how unhealthy my situation was. He left his wife, and I began an affair with him, not because I wanted passion or excitement, but because I hoped my husband would get angry enough to throw me out. He did not. He considered me his property and fought to keep me. Eventually, I found the strength to leave on my own, and that same friend and I later married. We have now been happily married for 32 years. Everyone believes it is my first marriage. My children, all from my first husband, call my current husband Dad. I never tell people the truth because the affair was never about cheating. It was about survival. Sometimes I wish I had been strong enough to walk away the right way, but without that moment of rebellion, I might never have escaped. Story 22. No one is going to read this comment, but I think typing it out will help me mentally. My husband died in a pretty horrific car accident in the year 2016. He was 32 and I was 30. We had not been married even 2 years yet, and his death was absolutely devastating. We had rushed into marriage, and the short time we spent together was tumultuous, to say the least. I spent most of my 20s as a single mother, barely making over minimum wage. Last year, I finished my bachelor's degree with high honors, moved to a whole new state, and took a very comfortable job. I now make 3 times more than the highest paying job I ever had before, and I absolutely love it. Being able to do whatever I want and go wherever I want with my child is something I could only have dreamed about 6 or 7 years ago. I would not be here if he had not been in that accident. I would probably still be doing menial work or be a stay-at-home parent. It feels like I got to restart my life with a clean slate, and it is actually going really well. The kicker is that I now work in the position and industry he had hoped to be in one day. I am not thankful that he died, but I do not miss him the way I think I'm supposed to. Story 23. This is not about me, but a close friend of mine. She tried one of those 23andMe DNA tests to learn about genetic predispositions and family history. When the results arrived, she saw a distant relative listed in New York and assumed it might be some cousin she had never met. We are both South Asian, so our families are very large. A few weeks later, she received a friend request on social media from a man with her family name who messaged her saying, "Hi, I know this is crazy, but I think you might be my half-sister." At first, she was skeptical and tried to ignore him, but he and his wife kept reaching out across platforms. The man claimed that when my friend's father immigrated in the late 1980s, he had an affair in New York, and that the man's father had moved before the child was born and did not know he existed. He provided very specific and accurate details about my friend's father that made us believe him. I convinced my friend to quietly confront her dad, and though I do not know everything that was said, I do know he was shell-shocked and moved out of the house for a while. This happened a few years ago, and things seem all right now between my friend and her family, but I have never brought it up since. Story 24. I think mine is pretty tame compared with some of these. I am in my 30s, and my conservative Christian family assumes I am straight, that I have only slept with 1 or 2 women, and that my current partner of 4 years is a cisgender woman. The truth is, I am solely open and do not hold to the belief of no S before marriage. I have been with women, men, transgender partners, cross-dressers, and have participated in threesomes. My girlfriend knows everything about me. She is transgender, presents as a woman, and I fully support her in everything she does and who she is. I will never tell my family any of this, not because they would not accept it. My mother in particular probably would not, but because it is none of their business. I also will not disclose that my partner is transgender because she does not want that known, and I respect her decision. To everyone else, she is simply a woman, and if anyone ever did find out, I would stand by her no matter what, even if that meant losing family. Story 25, I am posting this on an alternate account because of the whole hiding from everyone thing. I do not think I have ever written it out like this before. My father touched me when I was younger, too many times to count. It went on for about 7 years as far as I can remember. He would slap me on the backside, grope my thighs, and do other things no parent should ever do. My mother knew but did nothing. My siblings knew but stayed silent. I have only ever told 2 people in my entire life, one who lives halfway across the world, and another who is one of my most trusted friends. If I ever confronted my family about it, they would probably gaslight me into thinking I was misremembering, or claim it was just play. But I remember every detail clearly. I remember how he would get angry when I told him to stop, or how he would laugh it off, depending on whether he was drunk or not. It is why I hate physical contact from adults. It is why I am ready to cut all ties with my family as soon as I leave for college. It is why I stay out late, why I love my car, it keeps me away from home. It is why I only trust my friends and my girlfriend. Family does not mean much to me anymore. I recently turned 18, which means I can finally see a psychiatrist without my parents finding out. I want to address my obvious mental health issues and learn how to heal. I know my parents, especially my father, are to blame for what I am dealing with. But now it is on me to try to get better. It helps to write this out, even if I delete it later, like I always do. Thank you for giving people the space to let it out. Story 26. Years ago, a drug dealer I knew asked me to hold a package of money for him. He was bad news selling hero and coca, and was already facing trial for his 3rd offense. He said he trusted me because I was not involved in that world, and he was right. I agreed, and he handed me a bag full of cash, $125,000 in $100 bills. It was not as large a pile as you might think, wrapped tightly in rubber bands, only about 6 inches thick. Every week or so, he would call and ask me to peel off $5,000 and meet him somewhere to hand it over. This went on for months. Then, when there was only $10,000 left, he got caught again while out on bond and went to prison. His girlfriend started calling me, demanding the rest of the money, but I ignored her because I knew she would just blow it all on drugs. He was sentenced to 20 years in prison, and 1 month later, he hung himself. I kept the $10,000 and never told a soul. Story 27. First, I want to make it clear that I am not a danger to myself or anyone else, and that will not change. But beyond that, I feel like I am just done with life. I have suffered from chronic pain for almost 4 years now, severe sciatica that has left me partially disabled. I am unable to work, but not disabled enough to qualify for any real assistance beyond basic health care. I know how fortunate I am to have medical care that does not bankrupt me, especially since I am originally from the United States. But that knowledge only goes so far. I love my wife and my daughters. I want to be here for them, for every milestone, every good and bad day. I still manage to do most of the shopping and cooking, and I love making them good meals. But I no longer have any real desires for myself beyond not being a burden to them. That has become my goal, to make their lives easier however I can. Over the years, I have slowly let go of any personal dreams or ambitions. I cannot bring myself to read books anymore, or watch new movies or shows. I want to, but I cannot focus. The willpower just is not there. I end up rewatching the same shows, listening to the same bands because it is familiar and easy. Occasionally, I treat myself to something new, but mostly I save my energy for the evenings, when my wife and I watch something together. That time with her is sacred, and I want to be present for it. The rest of the day, I just exist. It would break her heart if she knew how I really felt. If there were a solution, I would take it. But my condition is degenerative, and it will only get worse. For now, I still have time, and I plan to use it to contribute however I can to be a positive presence in my household rather than a burden. I have not worked in years, but there are still ways I can help, and I make sure to do them. Story 28. Around the year 2008, my employer had a tuition reimbursement program. The deal was that you had to maintain a grade point average of 3.0 or higher, pay for your classes at the start of the semester, and then submit your grades at the end so they could reimburse you. Any scholarships or assistance would be deducted from the total. I was studying network security and maintained a 4.0 average. I was good with computers, unlike the folks in human resources, so I doctored the receipts. I deleted the line items that showed my scholarships, making it look like I had paid out of pocket. As a result, I got my entire college education paid for twice, 100% covered by scholarships and 100% reimbursed by my employer. I saved every dollar, and by the time I graduated, I had paid off my house, bought a brand new car, and had $10,000 in cash left over. I walked out of college with zero debt, no student loans, no credit card balances, and a full-time job paying $80,000 a year with benefits. For those who think I cheated the company, you are right. But it was Yazaki North America, a non-union auto supplier involved in shady practices like union busting, questionable overseas labor, and even being partly responsible for the emerald ash borer infestation that devastated Michigan's trees. So I do not feel bad. Eventually I quit and moved out of state for a better job, and when I heard how hard they got hit in 2020 when the auto industry shut down, I laughed. Story 29. I have a deep, dark secret that I have been hiding for years. I do not even know if I can put it into words, but I need to get it out before it eats me alive. The truth is, I am in love with my best friend. We have known each other for as long as I can remember, and over time my feelings have grown into something much deeper. But I have never told them because I am terrified of ruining our friendship. It feels selfish, but I cannot help it. Every time we spend time together, I catch myself staring and wondering what it would be like if we were more than friends. I imagine what our life could look like together, then remind myself that it can never happen. They are happy with someone else, and I could never break them apart. Even if they were single, I do not know if they would ever feel the same way. So I stay quiet, pretending everything is normal. It is painful, but it is the only way to protect what we have. I know I should be honest, but I am terrified of what might happen if I tell them. What if they do not feel the same? What if I lose them forever? Still, I know I cannot keep living like this. Someday soon I need to tell the truth, even if it means letting go. Maybe then I can finally move on and find peace, even if it costs me our friendship. Story 30. When I was in elementary school, a friend from church invited me over to play with her Barbies. She had all the best accessories, including a tiny toy can of dog food. For some reason, I wanted that little toy more than anything. My Barbies did not even have pets, but that small item represented everything I longed for. A stable, normal home, a place where kids marked their height on the closet door year after year, instead of moving to a new apartment whenever rent went up. That miniature can of dog food felt like a piece of that dream life, so I stole it. I convinced myself that if I wrote my name on it, my friend would not notice. She had so many toys I thought she would never realize one was missing. But when she came to my apartment later, that little toy stood out among my cheap Barbie furniture. She recognized it immediately and asked about it. I lied, and she clearly knew. That was the end of our friendship. I never told her the truth. About 10 years later, I ran into her at a club. We chatted over the music for a while, and it felt like old times. But I never brought up that stupid toy, never apologized. I still think about it sometimes, the smallest, pettiest theft, but one that ended something that mattered to me. Story 31. My name is Walter Hartwell White. I live at 308 Negra Arroyo Lane, Albuquerque, New Mexico, 87104. This is my confession. My brother-in-law Hank, who works for the Drug Enforcement Administration, has been building a methamphetamine empire for over a year and has been using me as his chemist. Shortly after my 50th birthday, Hank came to me with a shocking proposition. He asked that I use my chemistry knowledge to cook methamphetamine, which he would then sell using the connections he had made throughout his career in law enforcement. I was astounded. I had always believed Hank to be a moral man, and I was confused and vulnerable at the time, something he knew and exploited. I was reeling from a cancer diagnosis that threatened to bankrupt my family. Hank took me on a ride along and showed me how much money even a small meth operation could make. I was weak, and I agreed because I did not want my family to suffer financially. I regret that moment every day. I quickly realized I was in over my head. Hank had a partner named Gustavo Fring, a businessman who essentially bought me into servitude. When I tried to quit, Fring threatened my family. Later, Hank and Fring had a falling out because Hank wanted a larger share of the profits. Fring refused and the situation escalated. Fring arranged a failed hit on Hank, seriously injuring him, and I paid his medical bills over $177,000. After recovering, Hank sought revenge with the help of Hector Salamanca and eventually killed Fring using a bomb that I was forced to build. I have often contemplated ending my life, but am too much of a coward. I wanted to go to the authorities, but I was terrified. Hank rose through the ranks to become the head of the Albuquerque DEA. Around that time, to keep me under control, he took my children from me for 3 months. My wife, who until then had no idea about my involvement, was horrified to learn the truth. We were living in fear. Recently, I tried again to end this nightmare, but Hank threatened me once more. I cannot take this anymore. I live every day afraid that Hank will kill me or hurt my family. I can only hope that by sharing this, people will finally see him for what he truly is. Story 32. I am super lonely, cry myself to sleep lonely. My friend group has, without realizing it, made me the punching bag, and I work in customer service where I am constantly being yelled at. Between my job and my friends, most of what I hear all day are negative comments, including my own self-criticism. My dating life has fallen apart. Every man I talk to loses interest before I even get to know why, and it makes me hate myself even more. I think I am a decent person, maybe even decent looking, but I am not interesting. I do not have hobbies, so when I am not with friends, I am just at home alone in silence. It hurts because even when I am around others trying to escape my thoughts, I am still the target of jokes and mockery. Everything I say gets twisted into some insult or turned into a laugh at my expense. Sometimes I play along just to keep the mood light, but other times I get quiet, and even that is criticized. If I ever spoke up about it, I know it would backfire. One of our former friends left after complaining about similar treatment, and she was branded as overly sensitive. I would just be compared to her in a negative way. Even though I technically have friends, and I know many of them genuinely care about me, I feel completely isolated. I do not have that special bond with anyone. Everyone else has a partner or a best friend, someone who loves spending time with them. I am never that person. Some days it feels like I am only invited to be the joke, not because anyone really wants me there. I am not suicidal, and I have no desire to hurt myself or anyone else. I am just lonely. I want someone who enjoys my company, someone who makes me feel like my presence matters. I am scared of drifting further away from the only people I have left and spending the rest of my life alone in my apartment talking to myself. I just want to feel like I am truly treasured by someone. Story 33. I often fantasize about living on a huge piece of land, far from everyone, with warning signs posted everywhere, ready to chase away or threaten anyone, or their loud, annoying dogs who dares to trespass without my permission. I am just so done with people and their dogs ruining my peace every single day. My less violent fantasy is to surround the property with barbed wire fencing and plant rows of tall, thorny cacti along the inside of the perimeter. Inside, everything would be beautiful, peaceful, and private, a paradise that I would never want to leave. But the border would clearly say, "You are not welcome here." I completely understand now why wealthy people do everything possible to buy land, collect money, and separate themselves from the rest of society. Because most ordinary people really are exhausting to live near, always noisy, messy, careless, lazy, and endlessly irritating. I am tired of dealing with people who make the world worse just by existing around others. And if I get woken up by a barking dog one more time, I swear I might lose my mind. All I want is quiet, privacy, and space. Living like everyone else feels like punishment, like the universe is mocking me by forcing me to share this world with them. My greatest dream right now is to be rich enough to buy that peace. Story 34. My father abused me in every possible way growing up physically, mentally, sexually, verbally, spiritually, and psychologically. I have two older sisters who were spared most of it, though it still left marks on them. My mother told me every single day that it was my fault, that I deserved what he did to me. After I left home, she spent 1 week alone with him before finally leaving him. Yet somehow she still blames the collapse of their marriage on me. She even admits it was abuse, not discipline, but says it was my fault anyway. My sisters rarely speak to me because they say it brings back too many memories. My grandmother was my only real source of love growing up, but she is now 105 years old and fading with dementia. My mother is 72 and declining fast. My father's family disowned me long ago, and I have one friend left from high school. When my mother dies, I will have no one. I tell myself that I am fine with being alone, that I prefer it this way, but deep down I know that if I were gone tomorrow, no one would notice. It would be as if I never existed at all. Story 35. I am not hiding this from my husband. I tell him everything. But I wish I could be like those easygoing people everyone seems to love, the kind of person others naturally want to be around. I have felt like an outsider my entire life, and I am so tired of it. No one ever invites me to do things. I am always the one reaching out. Everyone else has these big circles of friends, and I cannot help it that I am not as cheerful or outgoing as they are. I grew up an only child, shy and isolated, with parents who did not know how to be normal. Every day feels like a fight just to exist without saying or doing the wrong thing. The one woman I spend time with constantly makes me feel worse, always talking about how much fun she and her family have with others, but never inviting us. I want to tell her that I cannot be friends with her anymore, but I do not know if I should. I just wish I could stop feeling like such a misfit and live without this constant sense of being out of place. Story 36. My family and friends believe I joined the military out of a patriotic sense of duty in 2003. The truth is that I had been raped in college a few years earlier when I was 19. A few people know that part, but what they do not know is that he filmed it. He told me that if I went back to his house, he would give me the recording so no one else would ever see it. When I went back, he had everything set up again, the same blankets, the same camera, and he raped me again. I begged him for the tape, and he told me he had already sold it online. I was filled with shame and completely lost trust in people. My father never knew why I dropped out of college. That decision was the beginning of the end of our relationship. He had paid for my education and was furious when I quit. I had gone back for the winter semester, saw my rapist on campus, ran to my car sobbing, and immediately withdrew from all my classes. A few years later, I joined the military because I wanted my death to make sense. I fully expected to die in Iraq. I volunteered for everything and truly wanted to be dead by my 26th birthday. I hated coming home because I had no motivation to live. I kept to myself, avoided people, and worked endlessly for 10 years in uniform before being medically retired. Looking back, those years were strangely the best of my life. Maybe it was the structure, the danger, or simply the fact that I did not have to think about my future. Now I am in therapy, slowly trying to rebuild myself. I doubt I will ever tell my family the full story. I still struggle to see a real future for myself, but at least I am trying to find one. Story 37. My best friend raped my ex-girlfriend, and I cannot talk about it to anyone because I am supposed to pretend it never happened since she does not want anything to happen. The guy does not even know that I know. He literally goes to all the places I go, and we share all the same friends. So to avoid conflict, I have decided to let it go before it gets worse. I have basically stopped going anywhere I might see him, and it sucks because now I hardly see my friends. I am really disappointed in him, and I am even more disappointed in myself for keeping this to myself. My ex has no reason to invent this. She had nothing to gain by telling me what happened. We are not close, but after it happened, he allegedly blamed me somehow and rubbed it in her face. Obviously, I was not there, and something was very wrong. I do not care about protecting his reputation for his sake, but it truly bothers me that he would hurt someone he claimed to be friends with. I would not care if they had consensually fooled around, but this was different. He pretended to be her friend, then preyed on her and assaulted her. I am not sure where his animosity came from, and apparently this is not the first time he has had problems with women. No one is willing to speak up, but I can tell this is not just an issue for her. There may be others who have not come forward. I do not have a problem with taking action. I just want to do what is best for everyone and to make sure no one else gets hurt. Story 38. I am 46 years old and started playing piano when I was 5, continuing until I was about 12. When I was around 9 or 10, I began taking lessons at the home of a woman who was, in my memory, in her 30s and married. She was lively and kind, and she would even transcribe the songs I liked into sheet music so I could play them. She was by far my favorite teacher. She was also my last one. I do not remember why or under what circumstances I stopped playing piano, just that I loved it and then suddenly I did not. My parents, who are wonderful people and with whom I have a great relationship, say they do not remember her name or why I stopped lessons, only that I wanted to. They also seem uncomfortable when the topic comes up. I never thought much about it until recently, when I was talking to a friend my age who also grew up nearby. We did not know each other as kids, but he mentioned taking piano lessons from the same woman. He said she was great, that he loved going there, and that he also stopped lessons around the same time I did, with no memory of why. His parents apparently have the same vague, uneasy answers mine do. The strangest part is that we both remember a small storage room upstairs with a stained glass window off the staircase. There was never any reason for either of us to go upstairs. Every lesson took place on the first floor where the piano was. But somehow we both have that same memory. Story 39. About 11 years ago, my cousin and I found a dead body in our grandparents' farm fields. It was deep in the farmland under a large tree. The man was wearing a black shirt and what looked like brown pants but no shoes. His skin was grayish-green and swollen, and flies were swarming all over him. He must have been dead for about a day. After a few moments of staring at him in shock, we decided without really thinking to bury him. We were introverted, serious kids who thought we were being mature, like in the detective movies we loved. I was 11. My cousin was 12. He went to get a shovel while I stayed by the body. We even said a prayer before burying him. Afterward, we searched around for clues, convinced we could solve the mystery ourselves, but found nothing unusual. We did feel regret for not checking if there were any injuries before burying him. At first, we thought about telling our family, but we decided to wait and see if any news came out about a missing man in the village. We asked some of the field workers if they had seen anyone wearing a black shirt around that part of the farm, but no one had. No one knew who he was, and there were no reports of anyone missing. As time went on, we realized that even if something came out, we could not tell anyone that we had buried him, because then we would have to explain why we had not spoken up earlier. To this day, there has never been a single mention of anyone missing or found dead that matched what we saw. My cousin and I have kept this secret ever since. Every time we visit our grandparents' farm, we go to that hidden spot to pay our respects. It is deep enough that no one else goes there. Only the two of us know about it, and now, all of you, though you do not know where or who we are. We still wonder who that man was. Story 40. This story is small compared to others, but it stuck with me throughout my life. When I was about 8 or 9, my grandparents, who raised my sister and me, brought home dinner from Long John Silver's. I grabbed a box of fried shrimp and ate them all, leaving only the tails. My little sister, who was about a year younger, asked if she could have some too. My grandma said she had ordered a large portion for us to share. I panicked, not wanting to get in trouble, so I handed my sister the box with just the tails left. She bit into one, crunched it, and immediately spit it out. After that, she hated shrimp and refused to eat it for decades. I felt guilty for years more than 20, honestly, because I thought I had ruined shrimp for her forever. When we were in our late 20s, she finally tried shrimp again and loved it. That was when I confessed. I told her about that night, about how I had eaten all the shrimp and made her eat the tails. I started apologizing, even tearing up a bit. She burst out laughing, shocked that I had carried the guilt for so long. Now she lives by the ocean and eats shrimp all the time. It has been about 15 years since I told her, 35 since the original shrimp tail incident, and even though she forgave me long ago, I still feel a little twinge of guilt every time I see shrimp. At least now, we can laugh about it together. Story 41. When I was a kid, all I wanted for Christmas was a BB gun. Everyone told me I would shoot my eye out if I ever got one, but I did not care. I wanted that rifle more than anything. When Christmas morning came, there it was under the tree. I was the happiest kid in the world. The first chance I got to use it, I ran outside and started shooting. Sure enough, a BB ricocheted off something and flew straight back at me. It hit me right in the face and shattered one of the lenses of my prescription glasses. Everyone had warned me, and I had just proven them right. My family was not well off, so breaking my glasses was a big deal. I panicked and came up with a story on the spot. Since it was snowing that day, I told my parents that an icicle had fallen and hit me. They believed it, and I never told anyone the truth, not even my dad, who went to his grave never knowing that his icicle story was a lie and that everyone had been right about that BB gun. Story 42. When I was 18, I started a secret romantic relationship with my aunt that has now lasted 10 years. It began the night I graduated high school. After a long night of celebrating, my aunt offered to drive me home since her place was on the way. During the drive, she started talking about how proud she was of me. And then out of nowhere, she put her hand on my leg. I jumped in shock and she pulled over. She admitted she had feelings for me, that she knew it was wrong but could not help being attracted. Before I could even process it, she leaned in and kissed me. It was the first time I had ever been kissed, and it completely caught me off guard. When she dropped me off, things escalated. We ended up sleeping together that night. A few days later, we talked about what happened and decided to keep it between us. I told my parents it would make sense for me to move in with her, since her house was only 15 minutes from my college instead of 40. They agreed, thinking it was practical. Once I moved in, our relationship continued in secret. I was young, and she was the first person I ever experienced intimacy with. Over time, it became something deeper. I am almost 30 now, and I still live with her. No one in our family knows we are a couple. We have built a life together in secret, and we talk often about running away and getting married somewhere no one would find us. We know it would destroy our family if the truth came out, but we are in love and cannot seem to stop. Story 43. I have a 16-year-old son I have never met. When his mother and I were together, it was casual, just nothing more. She was 18 and I was 22. I did not even know she was pregnant, let alone that a child had been born. It was only years later, after a DNA test, that I found out he was mine. Even then, I never saw him, only pictures. Her parents and she tried to bring me into child support, but I was broke at the time, barely surviving. I convinced her that I could not pay, and somehow we agreed to leave it alone. We both decided it was better not to involve the system. Eventually, we lost all contact. She went down a dark road. Drugs, DUIs, a few more kids. Her parents got emergency custody, and I agreed to it without protest. Every once in a while, the boy's grandmother would call or send me updates. She was kind. Then she passed away, and my only connection to my son disappeared. Only a handful of people know some old friends, a few close ones now. My mother died never knowing I had a child. My father probably does not either. We have never spoken about it. I signed over my parental rights years ago when his mother was deemed unfit. I was told he was living with his grandfather now. I have no idea how he is doing. I have not seen him once in 16 years. I carry that guilt quietly every day. I tell myself I was too young, too poor, too lost to be a father, but it still feels like an excuse. I know people would judge me harshly, but I do not care anymore. I already judge myself enough for all of them.